Hello, everyone. We are live on the Homeschool Quest. We're going to be talking about different homeschooling philosophies, also known as homeschooling methods. Today, I have with me Heather Schwartz from Knowable World, Rebecca from My Homeschool Village, and Cody Hanner from Homestead Education.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about different homeschool philosophies that you can implement in your homeschool. We're going to be talking a little bit about what each type of philosophy is and how you can implement it. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all the different types of philosophies that there are, just the ones that we get a lot of comments about in the group. Thank you again for joining us. We are running a giveaway right now. We are actually giving away 2 laminators. So if you go and check your email, we're going to be sending emails throughout the week with the chance to be able to enter to win one of these 2 laminators that we're going to be giving away here in May. So if you aren't already on our newsletter list, I'm going to drop a link here in the comments so that you can be able to go and sign up for that, because there is some definite awesome opportunities that we are going to be dropping over the next couple of months. So the first method that I want to talk about, I think, is the one that a lot of people kind of tend to start with, especially if they have just pulled their kids out of school, and that is classical education. So with classical education, that idea is based on that there's a way that children learn best changes with age and development. So it has 3 stages of education called the trivium. There's the grammar stage, the logic stage, and the rhetoric stage. So in each of these, you go over different information. So the grammar stage lasts about 6 years, emphasizes memorization of facts, observation and inquiry. Children are learning to read, write, listen, and make observations and measurements. The logic stage, this lasts about 3 years and emphasizes understanding what they learn through critical thinking to discern motives, meanings, cause, and effect. And the rhetoric stage, this lasts about 3 years as well, where students acquire knowledge but also learn to apply wisdom. It has heavy philosophical emphasis and focus on discussions, asking good questions in groups. So the goal of this is to create a structured environment for the purpose of developing well-rounded adults who are able to live with purpose, intention, and make sound decisions. So I'd love to hear from you guys what you feel are the benefits of classical homeschooling and any other elements that you feel really adds to the understanding of what classical homeschooling means and can look like in your homeschool.
Well,
I've used some.
I could start. I'm sure.
Go ahead.
One of the first curriculums we ever used when we first started homeschooling was a classical science curriculum, and we loved it. The kids actually still will circle back to it every once in a while, and I really did love the way that was set up. And a lot of the kids that I've seen that have stuck with classical educations or classical type co-op groups and things like that are just wonderful children that I can have beautiful conversations with.
My turn? Okay, I'll do it. So I actually like this as a start. I think when you first start homeschooling, it can be so overwhelming, and the idea of unschooling and some of the other ideas require more understanding of the child, how it works. And so I actually like this because it gives you a really nice foundation from which to spring from. And I think naturally we all start there. And then as we get more confident, as we get to know our children better, as we start to see them branch out, we all kind of get off of that. But I think that it's a great place to start. I think people need to start there so that they have that base to be able to be solid on before they go out and try the unschooling and the other things, because it does take some confidence, and it takes having confidence in yourself, in your children, and in just you as a family before you can branch out from that. So I'm a big fan of start there, but don't stay there.
You're also not having to fit them into a box of a certain grade level, because a lot of times when you pull them out of public school and go into homeschooling, they aren't in the same grade level as what all the curriculums label it. It doesn't match public school the same way. So being able to group them by maturity level.
Yeah, that's a big advantage for sure. I agree with what you said, Rebecca, that it's a place where a lot of people start. And I think it's the one that's most recognizable to people as this is what education looks like. It's what we're used to. And I think for a lot of us, when we go into homeschooling, it's maybe the first time that we've really thought about maybe our own education or what what education is for, what we're doing, all of those things. And so as classical education is a great place to start because it gives you access to sort of all of those subjects that we're used to thinking about and kind of helps you think through them and think, oh, okay, that's why I need to know grammar. And then once you know that, then yeah, then you can branch out and use some different curriculums if you want to, or do your own thing because you're more refreshed on why you're even doing it.
Very true. It was really helpful when we first started because we were like that family that thought we would never homeschool. So we had no clue what we were doing and we're totally lost and we're kind of resisting it. 8 years later, we wouldn't change a thing, but
yeah, I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Montessori next. So Montessori education is based on a method developed by Dr. Maria Montessori in the 1900s. It pairs a child's interests and with resources and curricula built to build an educational experience that supports their curiosity. So you could say that it is child-led and teacher-supported. So some kind of core concepts is that students are learning concepts at their own pace. Learning is guided by the desire to help children develop self-awareness, feel connected to others, and become productive adults. Parents may function more as guides and models rather than directive teachers. And it emphasizes keeping resources accessible to children at their own level so that they can access what they need to learn. It often only has 2 to 3 work periods in the day where children choose what to work on while being guided and supported by a teacher or parent. So I'd love to hear from you guys what other elements you feel are essential to a Montessori philosophy and what the benefits are.
Yeah, that's a great overview of Montessori. I would say, in my experience, Montessori homeschooling is really different from Montessori at school. And there are lots of resources now to help you take the Montessori philosophy and use it at home so that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on pretty wooden little things, right? You can make a lot of things or you can get cheaper versions because it's a little bit different than at school. And so you might not have 3-hour-long work periods at home, but you might have, after we eat lunch, let's go play in the playroom. And then in the playroom is all of these different activities that they can choose from, that kind of thing. I like Montessori. I have a soft spot for Montessori. It's where I started. I didn't get trained in it or anything, but it's what I used with my kids when they were little. And it can be complicated, but if you use the right resources, it can also be really sweet. And it does give them this independence to go and choose what they're going to work on. That I think is really nice.
I like that. When I looked at Montessori 20 years ago, when my kids were first getting into school, and I went and checked out a Montessori school, went all the way through it, and then saw the sticker price tag. I think it was $40,000 a year, and I choked. I was like, I want to have more kids. But what was interesting is when I looked at it, I remember thinking, if I had to choose a school for my children to go to, I would want a Montessori. But that's when the idea of homeschooling came to me because I thought, wait a minute, why would I pay them that kind of money? That's all stuff. It looks like it's just a school that's trying to replace home. Yeah. It's like the middle ground between a homeschool and a public school. It's homeschool without the mom is kind of how I saw it. And when I saw that, I was like, wait, I can do that. And then I brought him home. And so that's kind of what Montessori has always been for me. It's like, it's a school. But if you bring them home, it's just home. Montessori is how you follow your children and play with them. So that's kind of how I always saw it. So I kind of see all homeschoolers as Montessori in a way. Natural learning,
I really don't think I've touched on it at all. Besides, we've definitely, some of my kids' favorite toys have been Montessori toys. I grew up in a community where there was a little bit of a stigma that went with Montessori. So when we started homeschooling, I've always felt myself pull away from it, but that I've seen so many of the positives of it since we've started homeschooling. Yeah. But it just hasn't really been something that we've embraced a lot.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I remember from Montessori is follow the child. That's one of the basic principles, right? And so you're kind of setting up your home so that they can explore and do whatever they want. And then you go along with them and support them in learning whatever they want to learn, whether it's on their shoes or whatever it is. That's really nice.
Okay, so the next method I want to talk to you about is the Charlotte Mason method. So this is a very popular homeschooling method, especially with families with young children. It's based on the life work of Charlotte Mason, an educator in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So there's a few key characteristics of this particular homeschool philosophy. Education should be for the whole person, not just the mind. It's marked by 3 prongs of education, focus on the environment, which is called atmosphere, habits and character, which is called discipline, and academics, also called life. First, Charlotte believed that one must educate the whole person, not just his mind through academics. So this includes an emphasis on living books. Children learn from books that teach, but also are interesting and were written by someone who loved teaching the topic. These might include literature, nature books, biographies, really any other kind of engaging text, but not textbooks. This also includes nature studies, and this will help kids to learn through observe and draw their environment. This method is great for families that want to slow down and incorporate a lot of reading and nature into their daily lives. So what would you guys say are some of the big benefits to this method? And is there anything else that's really characteristic of this homeschooling philosophy?
Has anybody used that in their homeschools? Anyone here?
You know, it's
No.
funny now hearing that definition. I'm like, well, wow, I guess we are very much Charlotte Mason. You know, we read a lot. We do a lot of activities. I've always been a big fan of just read, read, read. If you love to read and read anything and everything, you'll be educated. Not that we don't do anything else, but one of the philosophies I'm always teaching is mind, body, make sure they're healthy first, make sure they're getting the sleep, the food. If you're not taking care of their mind and bodies, they're not going to learn anything anyway. So it's interesting. I think I didn't realize how much Charlotte Mason I was, but I've never really looked into Charlotte Mason. But I also think it's what homeschooling does. Like, that's who we are as mothers. Like, we can tell my kid is not doing well today. Something's off. Did he not sleep well? Did we need to change a diet? Let's educate. Let's get exercise. So I think it's interesting. I think that's also a normal, what we all do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My family's really big into like US history. And rather than reading textbooks, we do a lot of like we read In the Footsteps of Crazy Horse and then went on a road trip and went to all the spots that were talked about in the Footsteps of Crazy Horse, like, in South Dakota and Wyoming and Montana. And that's really how we get out and learn outside. But while we're driving, I'm reading. So it keeps the kids engaged for the whole road trip.
Yeah.
Like we're pulling out maps. Like I give them, like while I'm reading, I'm like, okay, he mentioned this. So let's get out our maps and see if we can figure out where we're going next. Like I usually already know. But I make them kind of try to work that out.
Cool.
It's a great idea. Yeah, that's like really living what it becomes real, and it's not just something you read on a page. Yeah, I think that Charlotte Mason has been really in general. Just maybe that more of an extension of mothering and an extension of life, really. I can see it. I haven't really studied it in depth either. I've never read anything by Charlotte Mason, so.
Yeah,
I think that it's really interesting to see its influence of each of these different styles on the homeschool community, because I think that everyone kind of ends up taking just a little bit from each of the different methods to kind of create their own style of homeschool. And that's something I really want to encourage people. You don't have to stick to one particular philosophy. These are all tools for you to be able to find a way that works the best with your kids and with your family dynamic.
What I have noticed the most, though, is like kind of traveling to homeschool conferences and stuff, is that a lot of people complain that that is the one philosophy that is mimicked the most without the same philosophy that Charlotte Mason actually originally put out. So that might be a consideration if you are looking for a full Charlotte Mason curriculum, is to actually make sure that they're following her original philosophy, unless you just kind of like the idea of like the nature type studies, so you'll kind of just go with that anyways. So
yeah, that's the thing, is that all of these are based on a deeper, like, these are methods, but they're all based on a different philosophy, really, like a different view of what learning is and how children learn and the best ways to teach. And yeah, when the influence kind of trickles down, it doesn't always come with that underlying approach.
Not that someone who's created something beautiful is bad, but if that's really the philosophy you're wanting to follow, I personally would start at the beginning and make sure that you understand it before you pursue any curriculum or styles.
Yeah, I think that's totally a really good advice. So let's talk about unschooling. So there's a lot of questions on like what is unschooling? Well, that's the thing. It's the least structured of all the different homeschooling options. It believes that people will learn what they need to know to survive and meet goals in life. So here's some characteristics of unschooling. They'll often let their children choose what they want to learn about. It's often referred to experiential learning or nature-based learning or life schooling. As children learn about their interests, other subjects are kind of woven in naturally using many kinds of resources. Specifically, this means, okay, they're interested in this particular time period in history. Okay, let's go and read. Now you're learning reading skills. Okay, let's write down some of the things we've read. Now they're writing essays. You're able to weave in all of these other skills that they need with their interests. And unschooling resists the idea that a standard curriculum, standardized tests, age-based classes, and traditional assessments are the most effective. And unschoolers learn through a wide variety of life activities and may choose to use books, hobbies, work, volunteering, and interacting with family and friends to teach what their children want to learn. So do you feel that there's any other characteristics that I missed? Or what are the benefits if you guys use unschooling method in your homeschool?
I think we use a lot of unschooling methods. It's kind of one of the first families I ever met when we started homeschooling was an unschool family. And I thought, that sounds so free. That was the biggest thing for us when we started homeschooling is I felt like freedom for the first time. But I have neurodivergent kids that if I would have told them they don't have to do school and they can do kind of whatever they want to do, it would have never worked. And so over the years, I've done a lot of reading and spending time in homeschool groups and stuff like that. And I think that's probably the biggest, like there's a gap there where some people say, if you're unschooling, you do just let them completely guide themselves. And then there's a group that say, yeah, you're unschooling, but you're still like the parent and the teacher and the guide, and you're guiding them through this unschool process. And I think that's kind of where we sit on that is I'm not going to let my kids sit and play video games all day long until they decide that, they want to build a Minecraft town or something. And then I'm going to, no, now we're doing math because we're doing a Minecraft town. Like, it's just not something that I'm going to pursue. But at the same time, like I have a 6-year-old right now who decided he's starting a worm farm. And he asked me to buy him a book on his worm farm, and he can't even read it yet. We read it to him. He wakes his 4-year-old brother up every morning to go out and collect more worms while everything's still dewy. He has a checklist that he made of all the things he has to do each day for his worm farm to keep them moist. And, he's really like going through all the steps. He's made me take him to the bait shop to see how much he can charge for his worms this summer. So he's really going through all those steps on his own, and I'm completely supporting it while we're only doing actual sit down school with him, maybe 1 or 2 days a week. But he gets up every morning with a purpose and a drive because of his worm farm.
I love that. That is adorable.
Yeah.
So I think I explain this a lot to a lot of people, and I had somebody ask me the other day, like, I think a lot of people think when they hear unschooling, they hear Lord of the Flies. Like, if I let my kids loose, they're all going to end up killing each other, And I think there's a misconception, and I think there's a definition that I have had to come up with for myself. That I believe that there's a wrong way to unschool, and there's a right way to unschool. And I think the wrong way is low expectation, low control. So you don't expect much of your kids. You do whatever you want. You don't have rules. You don't have boundaries. You just kind of, and those are the parents that they think we are. Your kids are wet and free. They haven't bathed in 3 days. That's the idea, right? And then we have the high expectation, high control, which is the kid who can't think for themselves because mom's got everything planned to the T. They've got everything done for them, So I always think of it as a high expectation, low control. So I expect my kids to be smart. I expect them to be successful. I expect them to be hardworking. They will know math, science, English, history, how to read, right? But I let them decide how they're going to learn math. Is it going to be a book? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be a tutor? Is it right? They decide how they're going to learn to read, but they're going to learn to read. So
my teenagers actually sign a contract at the beginning of each school year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Interesting.
See, high expectation, but it's low control. Mm-hmm. We'll learn. How do you want to learn it?
Yeah.
And I think we have too many, like, I don't, I think that's where I've defined it for myself. But low expectation, low control is Lord of the Flies. And high expectation, high control is anxiety and depression, children who don't know how to think for themselves. So that's how I've defined it for us in our family to be able to make that transition work, because I do believe the unschooling, when done right, is done well, is the way to go.
I love that.
But it can be done wrong.
That's great. I love that you came up with that definition for yourself. And I think that, ultimately that's what a lot of homeschoolers end up doing, is that they look at all this information and then they define for themselves like what we're trying to do in our homeschool. I really like a lot of things about unschooling, and I can't say that I don't unschool, like, in a way, because, there is that low control bit. And I also think that giving the kids lots of time to have their own interests and follow those and be supportive of them following those, like, that's where they get so much motivation to then sit down and say, okay, I can see that I need to learn math because I'm really interested in bridges. And I can see that, like, this is something that I need to learn. That's where they get that motivation.
Right.
So I think that it's really valuable for parents to read a lot about unschooling, because it helps you sort of question, like, the idea that everything your child learns needs to come directly from you, and the value of those things, of, like, just giving them so much time to just explore. Even though for me, like, that's balanced with, okay, we're going to sit down and do school for an hour right now. But the importance of them also having all that free time, and me supporting whatever they become interested in, and really seeing the value in that, I think, like, the balance of that is really good.
I
Yeah, I
agree.
think
We
that's
have
really
to be able
important.
to
Yeah.
expose them. If it's like, well, if I only follow their interests, I need to also introduce them to new ideas, new interests, new opportunities. And so for us, it's like we schedule more time. Morning is like the book work, the have tos. The afternoons are for the want tos. You get to do whatever you want in the afternoon if your have tos are done. And so they're learning to work first, responsibility first, play later, interest later. That interest led is a great motivator to get the mastery done so that they can go do their interest led work. And so I think it's a balance.
Yeah.
So,
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, you actually start seeing them start to guide themselves. And I think it depends on age of kids too, and kind of where their backgrounds were. Like my teenagers, they started in public school, so they have that mindset. And so I do kind of have to guide them in a different way than I guide like my younger kids who have never gone to school. But I see him actually starting to like test himself. Like after he gets done with his math or his English lesson every day, he checks to see if he can read his bug identification guide yet. Like he's automatically like testing himself to see if what he has learned is enough or if he needs to do this again tomorrow.
Oh, I love that.
That's adorable. So I would say that my family, with the kind of like, because I had 4 siblings, so with the older 3 of us, we started with a lot more structured learning. And then as we became more in the middle school to high school age range, which is usually the opposite, we actually went towards more of a eclectic unschooling style. And usually you get the eclectic unschooling with the younger years. We were kind of the opposite way around. And so we've really focused a lot on interest-based learning and life skills. And so it was things like, I'm really interested in writing and being an author. And so my mom's like, okay, so you need to have a job that pays so that you can do the writing as a hobby. And if it happens to be that you're an overnight success like J.K. Rowling, great. But you have a backup plan. And so that included being a copywriter. So it's like, okay, you need to have all of these skills. You need to know how to be able to, market yourself and be able to run a business. And so there was a lot of these skills where you weren't going to necessarily learn it in a textbook or from a specific curriculum. And it was a lot more life skills and hands-on learning. There was definitely an emphasis on chores and learning to cook and budgeting and things like that. Even from a young age, that was something that was always incorporated in, is that we all had to participate and to learn these things, because that was something that my parents really thought was important, that each of us was able to take care of ourselves. Right, like basically starting at 8 years old, that's when you got like, okay, now you're going to learn to wipe down a counter. You're going to learn to make your own bed, because you have the capability. And, they didn't expect it to be done perfectly. And I think that's the key to actually being able to teach these skills is understand they're probably not going to make the bed perfectly the first time, but after a couple of years, they are going to make it with less fuss because they are going to learn that they only have to make the bed once if they do it correctly the first time.
I think that's a big advantage too, like as a parent, giving yourself time to read all of these different philosophies and read some different books about homeschooling and things. And it helps you know what to expect at different ages too, and what to introduce, and how to have the right sort of attitude about what you're expecting from your kids. It's not that it's not going to be perfect, but sometimes when we haven't thought about it before, we don't know what to expect of an 8-year-old, and we think, sometimes we think, well, an 8-year-old should be able to sit down and do a page of math questions. And then when you hear from more homeschoolers or you hear more things, you're like, oh, it's actually kind of normal that at that age, they can't sit down and direct their own attention for that long. It's really important to know like what to expect at different ages.
And each kid is different. I unfortunately set a bad precedence for my mom. I love tests. I really do. I was always like, can we do another spelling test? And then the rest of my siblings were more artistic. And so they would rather draw it or explain it or, talk to my mom about it. And I was more of a writer. And so, but each one of my siblings had a little bit different learning styles. And that's why it's beneficial to be able to teach kids in kind of groups, especially if you have a large family, especially if you can group them by learning style. One of the things that we did in our homeschool that I really enjoyed was if we really were interested in a subject and we decided to become, the expert on that particular subject. Mine was writing, my sister's was art. We got to teach that to the rest of our siblings. And I can tell you for a fact that teaching things, even as a kid, totally makes it so you learn things, I feel like, better. You are able to see your own shortcomings in these areas because your siblings will ask you questions that you just don't know the answer to yet. And so that will actually give you motivation to go back and learn because you're like, okay, well, I've got to know the answer to this. I got to be smart.
I actually do that with my crew a lot. My 15-year-old daughter is highly dyslexic and she almost needs like her spelling retaught to her every year. But rather than make her start at like a first grade kindergarten level every year, she does her age level work and then she teaches her little brother. And so she's actually working through that curriculum with him.
Yeah, I love that. It really does help, especially when like my youngest sister, there was things that she knew that just like on history, there were certain topics and time periods in history that she knows a ton about, and just were not. I knew the important facts, but not really the details. And so she got to teach all of us. And one of the things that really taught me was, and especially in this day and age, she can be my boss. She does all of the graphic design for our marketing agency. And so when she's like, this is what the look and feel is going to be for this particular client, I don't have a problem with that. There's a lot of people out here that do have a problem with taking, like working with someone who's younger than them, or not being as respectful as someone that's older than them. Having that dynamic in your homeschool where you are doing it based on, whether or not they know the information, you are learning to be able to respect people based on who they are, not what they look like, what age they are, or any preconceived notions that you might have. And so I think that that's something that is really a benefit to homeschooling in general.
It's really great perspective from a homeschool kid.
Yeah.
So the last method I want to talk about is the eclectic homeschooling method, which isn't really technically a method at all.
Oh, it is.
This is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and I do see people ask, wait, what's eclectic? How do I do it? Well, you can unschool some subjects. You can use classical resources for others. You might enjoy Montessori manipulatives while liking to do, nature studies from Charlotte Mason style. You can pick and choose and add things into your homeschool. This is where a lot of homeschoolers end up, is they call themselves eclectic. any one eclectic family is the same as any other.
Yeah, I think we end up eclectic once we come up with our own philosophy. We spend some time thinking about what everybody else is doing and what everybody's saying. And then at some point, just like you did, Rebecca, we're like, okay, this is what I want from my homeschool and this is what I'm doing. And then we pick out the resources from wherever we find them that help us reach that goal.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
tell people we're traditional eclectic unschoolers. So like you're gonna do algebra, but you get to pick your curriculum and then you can go play with cows afterwards. Like I don't care.
And I think that's the key, is not to get too caught up in. And I think when you get started, you're like, oh, which one am I? I don't know. It's the whole defining yourself before you even know what the heck you're doing,
Yeah.
And I think it's important. Don't get too caught up in it. Know that they all have their strengths and you have to find what works for you as a family. So people be like, what kind of homeschool are you? Well, we're the Stromstorfers. That's what we do. We just do what we feel is right. And because, after 20 years, we know what we want, and we know what we don't. But the first 10 years we didn't. And so I think it's important to test things out. Keep finding, you have to find your own rhythm as a mom. Like I am not type A. If I have to have it in a planner, it's not going to get done. I can't plan, but I can definitely go with the flow. But the way I do it, another woman would be absolutely bonkers. Like, how do you go with the flow? That would drive me crazy. So it's important that you find what works for you and each of your children. Some of my kids are like their dad. They're engineers. They want it all planned out. And I let them do that. And so I just think that's the key. They all have their strengths. Pick and choose. It's more like a buffet. Just go in and make your own plate, make your family happy. That's really the key.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining me to discuss this. I think this is a lot of really great information, especially for people who are just starting on their homeschool journey. If you guys want to give a shout out to your website or a freebie that you guys are running right now, you're more than welcome to do so.
What order? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Heather can start first.
Sure. Okay, so I'm at Noble World, and we are building a history curriculum. We also have history classes for grades 3 to 12 that are just going to be starting up. Well, they've been running for many years, but they're going to be starting in our brand, Noble World, as of September. So this summer, we've got some free live classes. So if you go to knowableworld.com, you'll see right at the top, there's a button you can click to get our list of free live classes, and we have a bunch of different topics, and they're free. There's an elementary class or a junior and senior high class. So our classes go all the way up to grade 12, and we cover history. It's really everything that you need for history. It's very thorough.
Cool.
Rebecca, go ahead.
My turn. Okay, we're with My Homeschool Village. We have two programs right now. We have the social network, which we call Virtual Village Kids, or our online social network for kids, where we're doing online book clubs. We have an education Minecraft group. I have 3 days a week where the kids are playing on Zoom and becoming friends. We have art clubs. So we have a social network there. And then we also have a program where it's a full curriculum where we have partnered with multiple online curriculums and bundled them all into one package to make it affordable for homeschoolers. And we have the two programs there that you can head on over and check out.
So we have the Homestead Education. Oops, she's already got it up there. And I have created a agricultural-based homeschool curriculum with a focus on small-scale farming and self-sufficiency. It is a full-year science course for preschoolers through high school. I was an ag major and worked in commercial ag for 10 years before my family and I decided to pursue a more natural route. And I wanted to be able to reach kids where they actually were, which is growing food in their backyards, not commercial farming.
Cool.
So you can find my resources at StoryQuest Academy. I'm writing curriculum, and I'm actually giving away my adventure writing prompts right now. It's usually $3, and you get prompts for the elementary, middle school, and high school kids. These ones are fun pirate and adventure-themed writing prompts. So if you go over to my Ko-fi shop, you'll be able to grab those. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us, and I look forward to talking